leg los.
Dankeschön. Hello, Hamburg. It's great to be here. About an hour before walking into this room, a colleague of mine sent me a message. She was like, you know what? The screen is much bigger than it looks on the video. And I was like, well, thank you. I was already freaking out before. It's incredible to see such a big crowd here and to be able to speak about this thing that I've been doing for 13 years now. For those of you that don't know Highsnobiety, it's a platform that speaks about sneakers. As you mentioned, it's a platform that speaks about men's fashion, about streetwear. And over the last 13 years, a lot of things have changed, in the way that the success of a company like ours is being measured. It's page views, it's engagement, it's video views, a lot of changes. The one thing that has never really changed for us was this drive to build a community. For us, the most important goal was always to be part of the community that we speak with, to continue to build this community, and to have an impact on the culture that drives this community forward. And to start, I would love to talk to you guys about a few things that we do in order to engage with this community in ways that is maybe a little bit less traditional, so to speak. So here you see a project that we did a couple of years ago with Adidas Originals. For our 10th anniversary, we had the unique opportunity to actually design our own sneaker. And so in 2014, the brand had introduced the Ultra Boost, this new running shoe. And we love the shoe. It's an incredibly comfortable pair of sneakers. And so we went ahead, designed the shoe. And in 2015, for our 10th anniversary, we were able to release it into the market. And of course, we had a marketing plan, and we sent shoes to friends of ours. And people don't really come to us to shop, but they come to us to consume content. So I was a little hesitant when Adidas asked me, okay, so how many pairs do you want to take and sell? I was like, okay, we'll take 200-300. On the day of the release of the shoe, I will never forget this. It was a Saturday afternoon, 4 p.m. We had about 200 pairs to go into our online store. 14,000 people were hitting the checkout button. And so I felt two things. I was the happiest guy in the world because we managed to sell all 200 pairs. And I was the saddest guy in the world because we could have sold 14,000. So, but it was a great way for us to engage with our community in a different way and to really do something a little bit more unique. And still today, if you want to buy our shoe, you'll have to pay now 5 to 6 times the actual retail price than what it cost back then. The next example I want to give you is a documentary that we launched last year, which is called Counterfeit Culture Korea, Counterfeit Culture Seoul. So we went to Seoul, Korea, and we dug deep into the local street culture. And what we found out was that for some funny reason, Koreans don't mind dressing with real fashion and counterfeit fashion at the same time. And we felt that was an incredible story, so we produced a 16-minute-long documentary around that phenomenon and launched the documentary last September. It's the longest piece of video content that we had produced until then, and it was by far the most successful. The community really picked it up on a global scale, started discussing the documentary on Reddit before we even really kicked in our marketing muscle. And we had over 1 million views in the first 2 weeks of the launch of the documentary. It was amazing to see how something very local was picked up on a global scale and became a true topic of conversation. The next example I want to give is something that we did with Barney's New York. I think most of you probably have heard of Barney's. It's a luxurious department store from New York City. Just like most department stores, they don't have an easy time getting young people into their shop. And so we crafted together with Barney's an event called The Drop. The Drop was a 2-day event where we brought young designers with special capsule collections together, where we hosted panel talks that we live streamed, where we did interviews, where we had a t-shirt station where you could make your own t-shirt. We had a sticker station. You could create all sorts of different things, interact with the designers that you admire, and of course shop. We had, in the 2 days, 12,000 people come to the Barney's Madison Avenue shop, which is pretty good to start with, but the most important thing was 6,000 of those people had never been inside a Barney's New York store before. So it was incredible for us to see how with the right program, the right product, and the communication within the right community, we could actually craft something that would have a true impact for Barney's that weekend. Which sort of brings me to the main thesis of my talk today. I want to talk to you about how growing a community of style-conscious young men is something that is most important to us, how we do it in some cases, and why it's really important to think that way for many of you out there. In our case, we do it by curating and showing best-in-class product. We make sure that our audience stays ahead of the curve. We do it through on-the-ground insight. We have a team that lives for what we do. We have a team that has their ears on the ground, on the street, seeing what's happening and delivering those news as fast as we can. We drive to actually pick up new movements inside this culture very first. Burgeoning culture is extremely important to us. Did we get lucky over the last 13 years? 100%. Why? Because the things that our brand, that Heist & Beide is founded on, streetwear, men's fashion, sneakers, is really something that exploded and turned from a niche into a global mainstream phenomenon. There are a few reasons for that. Athleisure is booming. Most of you may recognize it. I'm seeing it right here. Yesterday, as I walked through OMR, I saw, or basically every single person that I saw was wearing a sneaker. The sneaker market completely exploded. The sneaker resale market, just to give you a bit of a feeling for that alone, is over $1 billion big. This is just people buying shoes and then reselling those shoes on other platforms. Hip-hop became by far the biggest music, overtaking rock music. In the United States, making up over 25%. Hip-hop culture, of course, very much embraces as well the fashion, the footwear that we push on our end. And streetwear has also become a luxurious thing. So streetwear did not only go into the mainstream through mass market, but it also became a luxury thing. You see streetwear brands being sold next to luxury brands. You see luxury brands producing their own sneakers. So it's really picked up on a global scale. What ultimately allowed us to grow organically within this community, stay real within this community, because it wasn't forced, but was really something that was happening and going on around us. Obviously, as you can imagine, most of our audience sits within the Gen Z and millennial worlds. And as you all know, those are, of course, the audiences that will have the biggest spending power in the years to come. So what is Heist & Beide today? On the left-hand side here, you're seeing the very first Heist & Beide website. Graphic design code done by yours truly. That's why it looks so shitty. And I'm pretty excited about the fact that I don't have to do that anymore. We're a team now of not 80, but 110 people globally. And we have offices in New York, in Berlin, in London, and in Hong Kong. And we serve our readers through multiple publishing channels, and we serve our clients as a content studio, helping them produce the most engaging content cross-platform for our audience and theirs. I want to show you now a little video that gives you a bit more information around Heist & Beide today.
The lining system. Everyone's over there, then you have another line here, then you have another line here, and then you have another line all the way down there. What time you get here?
Oh, like 6:30.
Early, man, 2 AM. I came here at 10 last night.
I didn't sleep for 3 days now.
What are you trying to get?
I'm always out here, always looking to get every jacket, every color.
Security, please. People with that ticket, leave.
I just want a tracksuit. Can't open it though, because dead stuff. Had to just squeeze my way through to get my name on the list, but it's just mad.
Just a normal day at Supreme.
Shout out Heist & Beide.
Heist & Beide.
Heist & Beide.
Heist & Beide.
Shout out to Heist & Beide.
This Heist & Beide.
Thank you. So what I would like to conclude with today is, basically my message is community is important. Community stands above all if you want to be successful as a voice, as a publisher in the market. And now I would like to talk to you about 4 learnings that we had that make the lifestyle community tick. The number 1 that I want to talk about is traditional audience segmentation is outdated. In our mind, the times of stereotyping audiences are over, and you really need to focus on serving a passionate group of individuals. It's important for you to realize that, the sheer fact that the internet and social media have the world so small, a 17-year-old in London and a 45-year-old in New York can actually have something in common. Furthermore, which is so true also for our market, you can be a sneaker collector, you can be a streetwear aficionado in the middle of nowhere, and you feel like you're part of this little niche, but the reality is that little niche is actually massively big on a global scale. And through the channels that we all like to use every single day, the world becomes a much, much smaller place. Last but not least, communities aren't just one-dimensional. If you share that you're both into sneakers, you might actually be both into several other things. You might also love hip-hop music, you might also love design, you also might love furniture. There are a lot of things that come with being part of a community. What does that mean for us? For us, it's absolutely key to realize that niche communities are growing, and it's absolutely key that we understand where those niche communities are actually interacting with one another. Here are just a couple of examples of things that we look at on a daily basis. We interact on Reddit in subgroups, we take part in Facebook groups, we look at Facebook Messenger things. There are a lot of things that we do in order to stay really truly connected within our community. The second point I want to raise, communities set the agenda and not brands. I think that's maybe one of the most important ones. We're not anymore in the times where a brand gets to decide what's big next, but it's rather the community. In our case, that became very apparent with the 90s sportswear trend. I'm sure many of you have noticed how suddenly Fila, Kappa, Esprit, Champion, all of these brands that were cool in the 90s are suddenly popping up again. You may also have noticed that performance shoes are actually becoming a thing. You have to realize that 5, 6, 7 years ago, it would have been unthinkable for brands like Nike and Adidas to release a performance shoe to a lifestyle audience. All of those barriers have completely dropped because the market asked for it, because a lifestyle audience, a lifestyle community demanded to wear performance shoes, demanded to wear 90s sportswear. If you look here on the left-hand side, you see the share of voice of performance-inspired sneakers on Highsnobiety. You can see that in 2015, that was the year where we actually released our version of a performance shoe, the Adidas Ultra Boost that I showed in the beginning. And the trend really became only faster and continued to accelerate. And we're still at a stage where some of the major footwear brands have not realized that they actually need to deliver a performance product to a lifestyle audience. So you'll probably still see this trend grow very much into the mainstream over the next few years. On top of that, the trends that I was just speaking about, 90s sportswear and performance footwear also made their way into luxury fashion. You're seeing a Gucci tracksuit here on the left-hand side, a Gucci sneaker. So there's a clear translation of what the community demanded into these brands' product portfolios. The third point is a new breed of influencer has been born. And I know influencer marketing, can sometimes have this negative connotation because everybody has this thing in their heads of, some guy or girl that doesn't really know anything but has a big following on some kind of platform, holds up a product, and that's what we call influencer marketing. The way we look at influencer marketing, it actually has an absolute relevance. The way we look at it is, as a cultural leader, you can have more impact nowadays than as a sports star. Influence has a new meaning. What does that mean? It's no longer just about the followers that you have, but it's about having a true message. It's more than just an endorsement. It's not anymore, you cannot switch brands as you like if you want to have impact as an influencer. You must have both a brand relevant and a community relevant message to deliver in order to be successful. I brought a couple of examples here, and I want to focus on the one on the very left. I'm not sure many of you guys know this guy, but that's Trevor Andrew, an artist from LA. And he decided a couple of years ago, he was invited to a costume party in LA, and he didn't have a costume. So he threw over a bed sheet, cut out the eyes, and then one of his signatures as an artist was the 2 Gucci G's. So he drew the 2 Gucci G's over his eyes on the bed sheet, went to the costume party, and called himself the Gucci Ghost. By chance, the Gucci creative director was at that same party and saw him running around with the Gucci Ghost costume. And he thought it was so funny that he invited him to design a full Gucci Ghost Gucci collection. So what's interesting about this is that he was already into Gucci before this collaboration happened. He was already using this iconography before this team-up really happened. And that ultimately means that it feels real to the community that they're trying to cater to. It's not Gucci telling him, okay, you have to draw the 2 Gs now, you have to integrate this into your art, but he could really stand behind this partnership with Gucci because he was doing this already for many years before. And the last one that I want to talk about, hyperlocal is globally relevant. I think my earlier examples, when I opened, were already pretty good examples of this happening. I spoke about our Korean documentary having an impact globally and getting the global community to talk about this phenomenon. You could also see our Barney's New York event. Again, it was all about crafting an event which was for local New Yorkers, but at the same time, it was an event that got a global community to talk because we live-streamed the conversations that were happening at the event, because we did interviews that released later on across our channels. If you look at the event coverage that we do, 93% of the views that we do around local events is actually happening globally. An example for that would be Nike Air Max Day, 2017. For those of you that don't know Nike Air Max Day, it is sort of a holiday now, which is coming up next week. So you guys should get ready for April 26th, where the world is celebrating the Nike Air Max technology. For last year, we supported some of their events in London and in Paris. And again, it was really interesting to see how we received hundreds of thousands of views across that content and a lot of conversation around Air Max Day outside of those actual cities. So to conclude, again, for us, the absolute goal remains to keep building our community and to make sure that this community stays ahead of the curve. What does that mean for us in terms of next steps? I talked about new channels. I talked about Reddit, Facebook groups, and other things becoming relevant again. So that's something we keep an absolute eye on. Local language platforms. Highsnobiety right now only exists in English and speaks to a global audience. We're launching next month, for the first time, a local language version for Japan. So that's a very exciting new development for us. Getting into the Japanese market, seeing what's happening in the Japanese market, and then elevating that content and actually delivering it to a global audience. Product collaborations. You've seen our Adidas sneaker. We believe that we can actually do a whole lot more than that. We believe that we can deliver products on a much more consistent basis, and through those products actually tell a much more appealing story. And last but not least, real-life events. I think OMR is the best example for that. It's great to watch YouTube videos around things, but seeing people interacting with people, talking live with people, unfortunately or fortunately, still trumps that. So for us, it becomes also increasingly important to host real-life events for our brand in order to have a real-life touch point with our audience. And that will be all. Thank you.